Hello and good evening, everybody. You know what today is. It's Thursday. It's Thursday. You are watching Jazz Cats. I'm your host for the evening, Dawn Webb, and I appreciate you tuning in. A little change in schedule tonight. I know I was supposed to have a young man by the name of Tariq Gardner on tonight, but he got his schedule mixed up. But it's all good. You know how we do. We just keep it rolling. But tonight we're gonna have from Chicago a very, very talented jazz multi instrumentalist and composer, Kahil Zabar. So he's gonna be joining me in just a little bit. I think Roger's gonna sit in tonight as well. So if you want, you can grab whatever you're drinking: ice water, iced tea, cold beer, glass of wine. I left my water in the car because it was still frozen. But yeah, I always, thank you all for, the support, the continued support and everything. We're going to be, I know I've said it before, but we're going to be adding music. It's coming. We just have to, work out a few kinks here in the studio. But we're going to be, sharing, music, especially new music. My little brother, Lynn Roundtree, he's got a new CD. If it's not out already, it might be. So I'm going to hopefully be able to get him in the studio so he can, talk about his new project. Oh gosh, Demetrius Neighbors. I know he has one that dropped not too long ago. Gaylen McKinney, her project dropped earlier the year. Zoot Suit Funkin' is actually doing quite well. So I'm gonna we're gonna be featuring some new music and some of the younger cats. I've got Alan Denard up next week. Had Trinino Lowe in. That was a fantastic interview. Aaron Alexis. I'm gonna, get Tariq back in. So if you wanna, come and join me here in the studio or via a Zoom link, hit me up. I'm on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, so just find me. I'm your girl Dawn E Webb. So that's how you'll find me on Facebook, and on Instagram, you're gonna find me at Dawn Diva 16. So reach out. I would love to have you here in the studio with me or via Zoom link, so we can kick it and talk about you, talk about what you're doing, your music, what's going on. I'm so glad the world is opening back up where we can start going back to some live music events. The Aretha, they're coming back strong. The music hall, they've got a new outside venue that I can't wait to check out and to book some artists. Pontiac is doing some things. They got the Strand Theater in downtown Pontiac. Beautiful, beautiful facility. I've had the pleasure of touring it while it was still being worked on and also attended a concert there. So excellent, excellent venue. And then saw another spot. It's a little smaller. Maybe do a little small CD release party, spoken word events and things like that. So we just got to get out and, continue to support each other and, get these musicians back to work like they're used to. So as soon as we kind of get the connection going. We'll have Khalil El Zabar on the line. And I was taking a look at a couple of his videos and dynamic gentleman. I hate that I'm just now finding out about him. But, I will be doing some more research, checking out his music and, seeing what he's up to, see if he's going to be touring and everything. So you are watching Jazz Cats on WJZZ Cool TV. We're live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Like, follow, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world. So I guess I'm so happy that you're tuning in from wherever you're tuning in from and the continued support. Roger's doing some, great things with the station. We were just talking before I came into the studio, some of the greats from WJZZ. He's going to be bringing into the studio. So can't wait to connect with those folks. The WJZ was worldwide. So many uh, jazz artists kind of got their, a lot of their music played on JZZ. And I've had the distinct pleasure of meeting, so many, jazz artists over the last few years. And the one person that they always ask about is Rosetta Hines, the Rose. I mean, in my opinion, she put JZZ on the map. That's just my opinion. And beautiful person. I had the pleasure of meeting her a few years ago at the Aretha, and she and I also had a chance to talk, after that. And excellent conversation. I was trying to get her on the station when I was on another station, but because it was so late, she didn't want to come out. At 11 o'clock in the evening. So I respected that. But we did have many conversations where I shared with her, me being in radio, and she had a long history with JZZ, and asking her, kind of what her, what, how she was so successful, what did she attribute to her success on being on the radio. And the one thing that she stressed to me was, Dawn, be yourself. Don't try to be anyone else. Don't try to talk like anyone else. Just do you, and people will gravitate to you for that. And, a lot of the music she played, she grew up with. I believe she told me she was the eldest, in her family with the children. And once the house kind of got quiet, she escaped with her music. So that's how she really came to, land on JZZ because of her love of music and everything. So she was a huge, inspiration. And a lot of times you can't go anywhere without, your real jazz lovers asking about, Rosetta Hines. So, and then I don't want to say I want to follow in her footsteps, but I want to, kind of be an accent to her. She's got some pretty big shoes to fill. And I don't think I will ever, be able to, touch that level of where she was, as a DJ. And, you really don't hear, too many women, on the radio, especially in the jazz arena. And, we've got to change that. There are so many, very knowledgeable, talented people out here that can host a station, host a show, and knock it out of the ballpark. So so yeah, so I just want to be an accent to Miss Rosetta Hines. I don't want to quote unquote follow in her footsteps. We've got the lovely Maxine Michaels, and she's a fabulous host. When she would do the concerts at the church, and she's one of my sheroes. Dynamic lady, very dynamic. So so there are a few locally that I can learn from and everything, and which is what I try to do. It takes a it takes a lot to learn about an artist, learn their music. I'm a lover of jazz, although I wasn't growing up, as most kids. But growing up, listening to jazz, probably in my maybe 20s, mid to late 20s is when I really got an appreciation for listening to jazz and listening to WJZZ. Hello, how are you?
Hey, how are you?
I am well, ladies and gentlemen. Kahil Zabar has joined me via Zoom. He's out of Chicago. Welcome, welcome, and welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And I, like I said before, I appreciate you kind of, jumping in at the last minute.
Okay.
I think you had a change in my guest today. So when Roger, sent me the text and told me he was coming on, I'm like, okay, well, let me do some research before I get to
Aha.
the position.
Right.
And
Well, we have to improvise sometimes.
yes, we do. And I think this is a excellent selection. I had the opportunity to kind of take a brief look at your discography. Oh my goodness, I got to go back home and do some more homework.
Uh-oh.
I'm like, oh my goodness, and I was just blown away, from what I saw, multi instrumentalist jazz. I was reading some of the names that you've worked with.
I've been blessed.
Yes, and I'm looking and I'm like Cannonball. I'm like, oh my goodness, to have been a fly on the wall, to listen to that experience.
Uh, what a musician, what a personality.
Hmm.
Um, some of Reverend Jesse Jackson's persona actually comes from Cannonball.
Hmm.
He's very, jazz musicians are so much more influential socially than people realize. It's like,
Yes.
when you see the vintage Bill Cosby, that's Dizzy Gillespie. He's emulating all the little actions and all of that. And when you hear the oratory of prime Reverend Jesse Jackson, is borrowed from the eloquence of how Cannonball Adderley spoke. The jazz musicians, both the women and the men, they were examples of our most refined aesthetics of rhythmic expression in lifestyle. And today we forget that in the hip hop generation.
Hmm. Well, I'm not a huge fan of hip hop. Some of it I listen to, a great majority of it I don't.
Hmm.
I'm a lover of jazz, and growing up, in Detroit, Motown, that's what so many people think about when you tell someone you're from Detroit, oh, Motown. But like you mentioned, they the jazz artists, a lot of people don't, you know they don't look to them, like you just said, as being extremely influential
Right.
and everything. And I noticed the album that came out, America the Beautiful. I was looking at one of the videos, and how on point it is, for today, and kind of coming off the heels of, Marvin Gaye's, song 50 years ago.
Sure.
You know,
Absolutely.
how do you kind of, with everything that's going on, do you kind of see the direction of music, maybe jazz, kind of going in that direction of the marches and things that we were accustomed to?
Um, Young people are really starting to listen to music they think that has authority,
Hmm.
that has authenticity, that is real in the meaning of
Hmm.
what it brings to their heart and soul, right?
Yes.
So jazz has always done that. The young audience is more overseas than in the US right now, but because I see such a growing audience both in Europe and Asia, I know that more young people will listen to it here. A lot of the hip hop artists and popular artists in their personal life are listening to jazz because they need inspiration of music that has sophisticated, evolved forms so that they evolve. One of the young hip hop artists I like a lot, Kendrick Lamar, his
Yes.
music is very jazz influenced and he's very reverent to the past masters. Um, and I'm very hopeful that the African American community will come to better understand the enormous legacy they have in the history of this music and those who created it, and to realize that it is something to utilize. If you have a young person that say is raised pretty much in the streets and is prone to violence, if they were able to analyze a Thelonious Monk composition, it would deter their sense for violence and bring much more introspection into the beauty of their intellect, as well as listening to Love Supreme by Coltrane, or to hear riffs by Betty Carter, or to listen to a suite by Duke Ellington. It expands your intellect. And in our community, it expands intellect and soul simultaneously. So this music is very necessary for the future.
Yes, it is. And, one of the things that kind of breaks my heart is that they've taken music education out of the school system.
Right.
And I'm a product of, our Detroit public schools. And in elementary, junior high, and high school, there was always some form of a music program.
Right.
The class, elementary school, I learned to play the flute. I never pursued it after elementary school because I thought it was kind of nerdy. I was kind of getting
Yeah,
interested
yeah,
in
yeah.
things. And in junior high, I learned to write and read music, and I never, pursued that aspect of it. How do you, I guess, feel, or how do you think we can kind of keep that education, in front of a lot of some of the youth that are lost, that are out here in the streets?
Well, we have to find ways to lobby heavily for the value of arts and culture
Hmm.
in public education. And that's going to take time, and that's going to take a concerted effort for people to realize that value and then participate in whatever means they can to influence, to bring more arts and culture into education. But I'm a big believer in do it yourself.
Yes.
Um, there needs to be more things like George Nanamdi at the Namdi Gallery that has art, but he also keeps concerts going and
Yes.
other kinds of performances. Um, we have lovely homes. We can be doing performances in our homes and invite major artists in those homes. We are not focused enough on cross generational events.
Hmm.
When we were growing up, we would see adults of all ages, and therefore we learned the etiquette of being an adult. And
Hmm.
in today's society, adults are trying to learn the etiquette of youth. It's all topsy turvy. Everybody wants to be young. Um, you know, uh, that it's backwards, because if you want to only be young, then you never want to become experienced and wise, because experience and wisdom comes through time.
Yes.
And
Hmm.
culturally, we always respected elders. And so for me, turning 70 soon,
Hmm.
it's very interesting that, I came up under Dizzy and Cannonball and Gene Ammons and all the people in the AACM, Muhar Richard Abrams and Art Ensemble Chicago. And it's like, I wanted to grow to the time I am now, because I remember how much we revered those that had so much experience before us. But now I'm that age, but there's not a generation with that same feeling that my generation had.
Yes, absolutely. And yes, I see your birthday's coming up in November and everything.
Yeah.
And you kind of touched on, you know, there's actually a couple here in Detroit, the Barfields. They open their homes in an area called Palmer Woods,
Yes.
and they host, concerts. And the few times I've gone, like you said, I've not really seen young people outside of the band members.
Yeah, yeah. I did a concert at Spencer's home
Mhm.
maybe about 8 years ago with the great deceased baritone saxophonist Hamiet Blewett.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay.
So
We're going to have to bring you back.
yeah, they've been doing that for a long time.
Yes, yeah, because I kind of work with a couple of our jazz artists here, in the area,
Yes.
and I'm loving, some of the younger people, the young lions. I'm loving, how they are gravitating towards, some of the older music, and for me, I may not know a song. I love the beat, and afterwards, I'm like, okay, who was that?
Right.
And how do I mean, I know I touched on kind of bringing it back to the school, and having open homes and things like that, but from a legislative standpoint, do we need to go to the capitals to kind of force the legislators to keep this going? Because I'm a member of the musicians union here in Detroit, Local 5, and also the American Federation of Musicians. So, how do we kind of keep this going? How do we bring this momentum or keep the momentum?
Well, I think we have to look at other institutions in America and see how they sustain their momentum, learn from that, borrow from that, and then make arguments of the disparity and the unfairness in regards to the support of our own.
Mhm.
In other words, the classical community for the symphony orchestras and the lyric operas, they have systems well organized to maintain the importance of their presence in the community. Jazz is as important or more because it's a truly original art form coming from the history of this society, generated by our community, but embraced by everyone, right?
Yes. Hmm.
So, why isn't the jazz institution in education and performance as revered, as supported economically, and as protected as the classical community? Why aren't we making arguments to Congress, arguments to the federal government, arguments to our city that we want the same kind of care, we want the same kind of economic support, we want the same support in organizing?
Hmm.
So we haven't done that. We haven't made those arguments in a successful way. We haven't come together to discuss what the paradigm shift we would like these things to be in. Um, I'll give you a different example. In the video gaming industry, there are all kinds of games for violence, right?
Yes. Hmm.
But yet, you don't see anywhere in the media that one millionaire has put up money to investigate, research, and develop a game as sexy for peace. You
Yes,
follow what I mean?
absolutely.
So
Mhm.
it's the same thing. We don't really see the wealthy African American community making an argument for the preservation of this music. We don't see anyone really creating a strong, organized argument for the cultural institution of this music being personified, refined, protected, and supported at the highest level.
Right.
This is our culture.
Hmm. Hmm. And,
And
and
yeah, and I don't mean this lip service. This
mhm.
is stuff that we have to do.
No, I mean, and we have to, get the boots on the ground, because I'm always frustrated and angered, when I hear people say that jazz is a dying art form. And I have to argue, with those people. It's like, how and why would you say that? And because like I said, I'm a listener, and I'm a lot of the artists, I'm learning their history, you know every single day. And and I want to help kind of change that narrative to, to, like you just said, we've got to, we just got to keep pushing. Like you said, with the video games, I'm not a gamer, but there's so much violence, in these games. And what can I do to help? To help facilitate a change in that arena.
Well, you're doing it every day by the work that you're doing, the fact that WJZZ and other independent stations exist, that there's a community, and the musicians, I believe, have a responsibility to. Uh, what I remember as a very, very young man was a very stylish, elegant community that was the jazz audience. And
Yeah.
I'm old enough to have played in the Chitlin circuit.
Hmm.
When we went through Detroit, St. Louis, Chicago, Harlem, Oakland, California, um, Jackson, Mississippi, Atlanta. We played all over the country, and everywhere we went, there were articulate, well-dressed, graceful. That was jazz.
Hmm. Yes.
And we've forgotten that. And the musicians now have forgotten it too. We look at jazz as being some stoic academic form for only the serious people. So where's the hipness? Where's the coolness? Where's the sexiness? Where's the Duke Ellingtonness? Where's the Miles Davisness? Where's the Sarah Vaughnness? And I'm not just talking about their performance, their persona.
Yes. I mean, exactly. I mean, how they, dressed and carried themselves. And, because when I grew up, I would see my mother go off to work,
Yeah,
suited. And, but when my dad got off of work, he got cleaned up,
that's
you know,
right.
to go out. And I modeled myself after, my mother in the way I dress when I go out, especially, in jazz environments.
Right.
Because my mother, she would always say, you never know who's watching. So, make sure you're dressed appropriately. And some of the shows that I've gone to, some of the jazz shows, some of the musicians, I mean, they look like they just rolled out of bed and, came and hit the stage. I've watched a lot of a lot of video clips from back in the day, a lot of black and whites. And I mean, and every single person in that space were dressed to the nines.
They
And
were they
they,
were
you know, and they weren't showing, tons of body parts and
right. No, they were elegant.
yes, yeah,
And we can't allow ourselves to be afraid of refinement.
hmm,
A refinement is not of one culture. Refinement is not one value system. We had our own style of refinement, our own ways
hmm,
that we should be very proud of. We should be informing our children. It's like when I talk to my personal kids and tell them that when my brothers and I were little kids, and it was the same in Detroit as in Chicago, we could go be in the park and be there all night and not worry about being accosted or being
yes,
attacked or being robbed. We were able to go in one another's houses. My parents didn't lock their door.
yes,
And
absolutely,
my friends and I would go into the houses. We have to tell the kids these stories, even though it's so fearful for them today and there is just too much violence. If we share the memories of a time when there was more loving exchange, it can potentially influence loving exchange for the future. We
absolutely,
should not be ashamed, of this history of what was so-called segregated.
hmm,
And
yes,
we have to tell people how elegant those times were and that we're going to have those times again. And
yes,
when you listen to this music, it connects you to that sense of being, that sense of aspiration, you dig?
hmm,
And hopefully from that, we inspire an excitement for young people to embrace it so that we have new discovery. Jazz is not old. Jazz is constantly growing.
Yes, it is. I mean, because I get my 3-year-old nephew probably and try to get him at least every couple of weeks. And one day we were sitting having breakfast, and I'm always playing music. And I had keyboardist or pianist Joey DiFrancesco playing in the background. You know, at the time he was no, he had turned 3 already. And so we're sitting there having breakfast, and I started, watching him like bobbing his head and patting his foot. So I looked over at him and I asked him, if he liked what he was hearing. And he's like, "Yes, I like that. Play it again." So,
Wow.
yes, so that's my way of, I guess, making a contribution is to exposing, my nephews to different music. I have one nephew who plays the trumpet. I think he's 11, and my other nephew, he's 5, and he plays the piano. So, I want to make sure, that they know of those experiences,
Sure.
see those, movies and read the history, of the musicians that have come up and, and have left their legacy for us.
Right. And letting them hear the young musicians like Christian Scott and Corey Wilkes, who plays with me, and Nubia Garcia is a young saxophonist out of London. I'm very interested in the next generation, and you know, I never want to sound old and bitter. You know what I mean? It's like I'm very proud of the young musicians globally that have taken this on because it's not easy. I mean, they got to pay rent, they got to pay back their school loans. They have young families, and they are doing it, all over the world, in all kinds of cultures, in India, in South America, in Africa, all over the world. Young people are embracing jazz, reinterpreting it, acknowledging the masters. Um, what they need from, I think, my generation, because there's just a few of us living. We're not that old, but because the attrition is so hard on us, we just don't make it that long. So those that are still here have to give them the memory of what it was really like, because you can't learn that in school. You can't learn what that touch, that spirit, that has to come from a life experience. And so that's what I try to do, the same way that Dizzy and Pharoah Sanders and so many people passed it on to me. I try to pass it on, what that life is about, to the next generation.
Yes. Now, in your teachings, I mean, have you had any, I guess, pushback from some of the some of your younger students? Where they may tell you, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to do it this way. I'm not going to do it your way." And if so, how do you, respond, to that type of, pushback?
Oh, that happens because we're all human, but I just tell them, regardless of when we're in sync or when we're in difference with one another, hang in there and do your thing. And if you stay real, opportunities will reveal themselves, but you got to be willing to go through it.
Hmm. Yes, and a couple, like I said, a couple of the jazz artists, that I work with, bass player Ralph Armstrong.
Yeah, Ralph, that's my man.
Yeah, he's a very, very hard teacher. Because he's been kind of mentoring me, in the
Yeah.
music business, and a lot of his students, and I've, witnessed, how he, talks to the students. I mean, he's never disrespectful,
Right.
and but you can see the compassion when he's working with these young kids, and he will not stop. He'll call them a dummy, if they're not doing something that he's taught them before.
Right. But he's always though got a great sense of humor.
Mm,
You
yeah.
know, that's what I love about, Ralph. He can be serious to the bone in this music, but he also's got that spark and that giggle, and I'm sure that helps, bring the student, through besides the serious part.
Yes, and at the at the university level, he's shared with me kind of some of the educational deficiencies, from his seat.
Yeah,
And and again, how do we get these universities kind of in sync or in line with what these musicians are going to expect when they get out here in the world pursuing their full-time music careers.
yeah. Um, it's going to be different. I mean, I have a PhD.
Hmm.
So I know the academic community. Um, I think that universities and colleges are extremely important to learn information and gain skills. But these young, completely academically trained musicians are missing soulfulness. And that's not put into school. And I don't know how that would be translated because the academic system is predominantly Eurocentric
Hmm.
in value. And so that system never really translated passion academically. They never translated intuition academically. They don't really have a strong pedagogy for touch of the spirit, touch of the essence, touch of the soul. Uh, so, there could be more literature. There could be more, say, media, video examples of folks that have that gift and that kind of power. And we don't have a lot of our community articulating the value of that as well. So we've lost a lot because we didn't recognize the need to protect it.
Absolutely,
Let
yeah.
us not lose more in this time. You know what I mean? Let's just all work together. Let's communicate. Let's find ways where various cities are connected to each other. The
Mhm.
media is here. The future is data, right? Data. So we need the soul data. We need to know that there are numbers out here listening to the music, that we're building demographics, that this spirit of continuance won't die, that the efforts of folks like Ralph Armstrong and James Carter and
Mhm.
Alex Harding, who plays with me from the Big D.
Yeah.
Let's make sure that these people get recognized the way that Hank Thad and Elvin Jones and Yusef Lateef and so many brilliant jazz musicians that have come from Detroit. It's one of the meccas of jazz,
Yes, it
and
is.
there's a lot of great jazz musicians today from there. So let's connect that, as well as there's great musicians in Chicago historically, in St. Louis, in Philly, in New Orleans. Let's get out of our little small tribal and let's get to the data. Let's find out what the national quota is for African Americans listening to this music and perpetuating it, as well as many other Americans. But especially the African American community owes a responsibility to the legacy of what's been put forth so that it can be perpetuated in the future.
Excellent. I love it. Like I said, I'm ready to do what I need to make that happen. I'm a huge supporter, of the arts, the music. I love it. And any chance I get, to get out and support, our black music, our jazz musicians, And there are times where I can end up in maybe three places in one night.
Yeah.
Because there's so much going on, and now kind of with COVID kind of quieting down and things are opening back up, which is fantastic. And I'm hoping that the Detroit Jazz Festival is outside this year, because it was virtual last year, and
Right.
it just didn't feel the same. The buzz was not in the city. It was kind of quiet.
Right.
We were kind of stuck in the hotel for 4 days. You because once we parked, we really couldn't leave.
Right.
And so what can we expect from you coming up this year, next year, in terms
Uh,
of new music?
well, right now I'm scoring a movie for PBS. I'm supposed to be finished by the end of June, and the movie's called This Little Light. It will be broadcast on PBS, I think, in October. The director is Kevin Shaw, and the movie's about young black kids in the inner city of Chicago who were having their school closed, and they had the top grades in the city, and they were trying to figure out why is their school closing. And it happened that a new group of young white parents wanted the school closed so they could open the school for their kids going into high school.
Hmm.
And the young black kids won a discrimination case against the city and the state, and they kept the school open. The school is called the National Teachers Academy, and I was very thankful that Kevin Shaw asked me to score the movie. So I'm doing that, and I've got a new record coming out called A Time for Healing on Spirit Muse Records that will come out around my birthday in November. I recorded it maybe about 3 months ago with Corey Wilkes, um, Justin Dillard, great pianist, keyboardist, and a 23-year-old saxophonist out of Chicago who went to high school with my middle son. So it's amazing, right?
Wow.
So he's like, Kahil, I remember when you used to take me to school. I said, yeah, well, you're a grown man now. So Isaiah Collier, extraordinary young reed player. And so I love, working with younger artists as well as with my peers. And so that record will come out internationally. And I'll begin touring in late fall, doing some stuff with the great David Murray, saxophonist, and also with my band, the Ethnic Heritage Ensemble. And I'm hoping to be back in the Big D for my annual Black History Month concerts, which I've been coming to Detroit, for years during Black History Month.
Oh boy. Okay, I'm gonna have to track you down.
Yeah, you got to come out.
Yes, no, because I haven't been to Chicago in a minute, so that's one of my favorite places to go. Some great food, and magnificent shopping,
Yeah, yeah,
and and clubs and everything. So, like I said, I was just kind of briefly reviewing your discography, and whoo, my goodness, you've been busy.
well, it's like those that came before set a precedent for excellence,
Hmm.
and I'm a work in progress, striving to be a part of the crew.
Oh, that is wonderful.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I was taking a look. I see there's a film on Amazon Prime from your the documentary follows your band.
Yeah, that was produced by the great Angela Bassett and her husband Courtney Vance,
Hmm.
and the director is Dwayne Johnson Cochran. Um, yeah, that came out a few years ago.
Yeah, I see here in 2000, was it 2007?
No, it was documenting the tour from 2007, and I think the film came out around 2014 or 15.
Okay, perfect.
Mhm.
Okay, I will most definitely check that out, and I cannot wait for the documentary on PBS in the fall.
Yeah, when I saw those young kids win,
Mhm.
I mean, very seldom do we see our kids win. They were optimistic. They were willing to go through the struggle. They were passionate. They believed that they were right, and they were.
Mhm.
You know, if they're from an underprivileged neighborhood and they manage to have the top grades in the city, and then you're going to close their school to provide for a wealthy community to have their own school, that's not right. And when I saw the faces of these young, brilliant people, it was inspiring. So I hope that I will do justice to it with the music that I write for it.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh God, I would love to try to do sponsorship to show it here. You know, at one of the theaters here. You know, in the Detroit area.
Oh, well, I'll connect you with the director. I'm sure that's possible.
Yeah, yeah, I would love to do that. I mean, because there's so many, venues that we could showcase it.
Yes.
Everything. So I would, love, love, love to do that when it comes out. Kind of
Uh,
in closing, we got just a couple of minutes.
Okay.
What advice would you give to these young folks kind of wanting to, kind of pursue and follow in your footsteps?
Oh, well,
Be successful at it.
yeah, I would tell young percussionists that they are not only in the background and their role is not only to keep time, that percussionists can be composers, that percussionists have a broad array of sensibility to the note value in music. I would tell all young musicians not to be afraid of the hardships, to get clear about their mission, to develop a calendar of aspirations, and to critically assess their movement in order to see themselves successful. I would say to our community, do not look at statistics only to realize our sense of being, but to go inside and read from your DNA the spiritual quest towards success beyond what the interpretation of this society's role for our community to be. To know that we are winners, that the mind is unlimited, and that dreams can be manifested into reality once we escape from the box and invent our own voice.
Beautifully said. I love that.
Thank you.
And and just kind of piggybacking on that, I know there have been many times where parents have shut their children down. They're saying, "Oh, you can't have a viable career, in the music business. You have to, go to college, 9 to 5, work 30 years, get the Timex watch, and just go home and just kind of sit." What do you tell a parent, that doesn't believe that their children can be successful, in the music business?
The reality is that time has changed.
Hmm.
I had said earlier that we are in the age of data, which
Yes.
means that anything that you want to do, you can be successful because you can qualify and quantify the numbers toward your enterprise.
Hmm.
Our children can do whatever they want to do and use the technology to translate the way to direct analytics to their opportunity. So if you want an audience and that audience is going to be 2,000 people and they're going to pay you $10, a month, that's 20 grand.
Yes.
If you're going to have an audience of 200,000, if you're going to have an audience of 2 million, now we have the ability to work. One young person is going to be in marketing, another person's in PR, the other's in technology, the other's in music. And she and he are going to work together, and they don't only have their neighborhood, They have the entire planet to connect their services to expand the potential of success for audiences worldwide. Whatever you want to do, you can do it.
Yes.
You got to be about it, though. You got to be serious. And you got to be excited. You got to know in yourself, nothing is going to stop you from your dreams.
Yes. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you again for your time. I appreciate meeting you.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
And I'm looking forward to the documentary, the tour, and everything. Like I said, I would love to, have that, shown here in
Okay.
Detroit.
And we'll do the hang in Chicago and we'll do the hang in Detroit.
You got it. I got
All
you.
right. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Enjoy your evening.
You too.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And you are watching Jazz Cats on WJZZ Cool TV. That was the amazing Dr. Kahil El Zabar. So be on the lookout for the documentary, the single, and the tour. So thank you again for spending your time with me. Peace out.